The Chronicles of Sekhmet On Olmecra by Indigo Patel. Book 1, She Comes Forth by Day, edited by Z.P. Foy. Copyright 2017 by User Friendly Systems Consulting and Management. All rights reserved, including the right to reproduce this book or portions thereof in any form whatsoever. For information, address User Friendly Systems Consulting and Management at consultants@userfriendlysystems.com. First edition, September 2017. Cover design by Z.P. Foy. Table of Contents. Prologue, The Chateau. Chapter 0, The Lioness Legacy. Chapter 1, Blue Lotus Petal. Chapter 2, Coming Forth by Day. Chapter 3, Handle the Truth. Chapter 3, Handle the Truth. Chapter 4, War on the Horizon. Chapter 5, Go Tell the Mountain. Chapter 6, Royal Court of Nefer. Chapter 7, Mental Health Matters. Chapter 8, Zig and Zag. Chapter 9, We There Yet? Chapter 10, 40 Acres. Chapter 11, We Do Nothing. Chapter 12, Olmecra is Rising. Book 1 Epilogue, and Set No More. Author's note, and then glossary of terms and characters. Asante Sana, thank you very much to my wonderful husband for helping me to find freedom, evolution, and creativity. Much love to everyone who supported me on the path. Ashe. Cosmic Asante to C-Star Octavia Butler, whose books introduced me to science fiction from an Afro-American woman's perspective, and Nichelle Nichols, who encouraged us to travel amongst the stars. There is no shortage of love, but rather those who fear it, refuse it, won't trust it, and feel the urgency to get it. An Oshita Mir proverb. Prologue, The Chateau. The ancestors tell a story how a goddess from the great civilization of Kemet accepted a mission to raise the vibrations of Earth high enough for it to ascend with the other planets in its solar system. You see, in Kemet, the immortal deities are called the Neter, spelled N-T-R, meaning nature or nurture. This goddess of the Neter is more ancient than the days of pharaohs and the pyramids. She comes from a pantheon that existed before our galaxy. This is her story told only in her way. The cosmic sacred womb is continuously giving birth to time and space in the universe, where thought travels seeking what is seeking it. Often, a soul will attract a thought and manifest into a sentient light being. One-dimensional thoughts on beauty, intelligence, strength, and nurturing begin to evolve at the end of the age of Capricorn to create three-dimensional energy. The feminine energy that evolved during the age of Sagittarius generated a special role of women called Queen Mothers. These light beings developed the abilities to create themselves, to recreate themselves, and bring leadership to a legacy of empires and civilizations. During the early part of the age, 9 great Queen Mothers made the first quantum leap of evolution, making an era called the Divine Feminine, Divi 9. The Chateau Council came about as an assembly of empires acquired by the Divi 9. As a collective governing structure, the primary mission of the Chateau Council is to perpetuate principles that give free will to intergalactic evolution. By means of research and development, council members are continuously seeking paths to higher dimensions in the universe. One proven path the Council has adopted is the Ascension of Planet and Galaxies model. When a planet is organically birthed by a queen mother's energy, energy can be created from its rising vibrations. And once every planet in a solar system raises its vibrations high enough for ascension, galaxy energies are harvested as forces. A quantum leap is then created to propel light beings into higher dimensional levels of thought. As one of the original Devi 9, the great Queen Mother Nut birthed the legacy of Lioness by grooming the many sea stars she embodied. The great Queen Mother Nut progenerated daughters to be goddess queen mothers, universal scholars, and supreme science adepts, all mastering the alchemy of creation. The Council is very methodical in their practice of creating new solar systems and galaxies, continuously executing projects to ensure the ascension energy can be harvested. The great Queen Mother Nut's empire is unique in the use of fluids to provide the Council with vibrational lifting operations. Her daughter, goddess Tefnut, nurtures the energy force called moisture. Fluid movement using water became the signature ingredient for all Shaitan Council planetary matter. The great Queen Mother Nut blessed goddess Tefnut with 2 siblings, giving them each their own unique energy force. Goddess Ast and Nephthys were born twin sisters at a time split between the age of Libra and the age of Virgo. Goddess Nephthys, born with the stars of Virgo, embodied the supreme energetic force for organizational attributes and multitasking to build the first great houses or pharaohs. While Goddess Ast, born within the age of Libra, would be the first deity with 13 strands in her DNA. The additional strand was engineered to give Goddess Ast an energy force to evolve at quantum speeds. And at the dawning of the age of Leo, Goddess Tefnut birthed her daughter, Goddess Sekhmet, to nurture and heal evolving souls using fire. This bloodline of the great Queen Mother Nut marked the genesis for the cosmic lioness path. Chronological time, Shaitan, universal age, Cancer. Long count vibration, low. Earth calendar year, 0000. Season day, Kepra, 00. Sun hours, 0000 Herus. The young alchemist Adept Ash joined her first Sacred Womb Communications Cloud as a presenter, giving acknowledgement to the many great queen mothers, scholars, and other adepts gathered. Her confidence was felt amongst the council. Many times Adept Ash had proven her worthiness as an initiate of the Shaitan Council. Soon, alchemist Adept Ash would finish her final rites of passage and become a guardian of the sacred womb. Alchemist Adept Ash was shining particularly bright in time and space when Mommy Nut called for her to begin her presentation before the council. At first, the alchemist Adept's communication frequency started low and weak, as Goddess As explained why she and only she was best qualified to Queen Mother the new triangular God star system. The Committee on New Harvesting Energy had kept the triangular project secret from the overall Cheta Council until then. Alchemist As became privy to the project's details when she was accepted into the Cheta Council's Academy for Universal Ascension as a research and development intern. With encouragement and recommendation from her galactic aunts, Goddess As started her path as an alchemist adept after being granted the internship on the Energy Harvesting Committee. But her prestigious assignment had nothing to do with nepotism. Adept As galactic aunts insisted she first demonstrate skill sets in all 7 liberal arts of the universe and earned her master teacher's qualifications before consideration. Admission to the Academy as an adept additionally required demonstration of natural connection to alchemy for bonding ancestral lineage, AF, with solar system science, Ra, to consciousness, Ka, a practice called Af-Ra-Ka. Adept As could feel by intuition the need to vibrate higher and with more emotional thought for her presentation. Raising her frequencies as high as she would, the council gladly adjusted to follow her rhythm. She transformed into a lioness. Adept As mother, the great Devi, Queen Mother Nut, loved to witness her daughter shape-shifting and felt maternally proud witnessing the adept mold herself into astrological signs. The Cheta Council was overly impressed to witness truth in nature as the lioness described her plan. The first triangular God solar system, Trigod, would triple their returns on evolutionary energy harvesting. The adept explained, the platform for the system is codenamed Sirius. The triangular support system will provide stability. The mound design will keep alignment with our sacred womb technology. And this time, the star energies will have 6 points instead of 5. She continued, suns will bring energy in the form of the black chemical melanin. The moons that orbit the suns will bring emotions in the form of vibrations. The skies of the planets will enable travel for its inhabitants by their practice of meditation. And the bioengineering team has devised a planetary self-sufficiency process to recycle resources using a synthesis called nature. Adept As took a pause to smile at the council's applause when she described the plan to allow the planets to sustain themselves using renewable energy. But her presentation wasn't complete. She continued through the applause. With loving support of Goddess Tefnut, the bioengineers have selected the use of water as the major procreational element for the galaxy. Adept As had the council's full attention. She could feel the heat of many of the light beings as they listened with anticipation. Another gift we will bring to the planet's inhabitants is the alchemy of air, to bring power to the new concept called breath. The adept took another pause for applause. Illustrative images flashed through the council's proprietary network of ether, with timeline details on how each planet would be stepped through 6 astrological ages of evolution. Each astrological time frame would begin with a long count of vibrations to elevate the planet into the next era. When Adept's detailed presentation concluded, there was only one question that came from the Shatta Council, and the inquiry came from the As executive mentor, the great Queen Mother Mut. The question seemed so simple, it almost caught Adept As off guard. Taught to be thorough whenever addressing questions from the council, when Queen Mother Mut asked, "Do you know who we are?" Adept As prepared to recite her final goddess rites of passage declaration in all its essence. Adept As raised and stood on the two back legs of her lioness form and began. We are African women. Our wombs carry the consciousness of the ancestors and the seeds of galactic empires. We are African women. We are the continuity that ensures progressiveness of all energies in the universe. We are African women. We are nation builders for all eternity. We are African women. We are accountable to our ancestors, and we strive to keep everything within balance. We are African women. We are the destiny of economics, alchemy, and nurturing. We are African women, and I am Goddess Aset, Queen Mother Sirius of the Trigod Star Galaxy. Once Goddess Aset had finished her recitation, a lion-headed sphinx appeared on her left and right. Each sphinx opened a golden frame gate placed between them, with endless height and water-like fluid bars. Goddess Aset walked on all four legs through the entryway that confirmed her place and purpose as a guardian of the sacred womb. It wasn't what Queen Mother Aset expected, but as she passed between the two sphinx, she found her twin sister following closely behind her. The newly appointed Queen Mother Goddess Nebhet declared her purpose to nurture the Trigod Star solar system with well-organized households. Overjoyed to be joined by her twin sibling in celebration of their rites of passage at the same time, Goddess Aset looked forward to sharing her formalized mission. Goddess Nebhet was saluted by the Shata Council first with a headpiece of strength, fortitude, and order, in the form of an ornate column representing the great houses to be built, the pharaohs. Blueprints of the supreme households described how the pharaohs formed of truth, justice, and order would contribute to raising the vibrations of the planets. Goddess Nebhet had been integral in providing sections of the Trigod Star presentation that outlined a concept called Happy, Healthy Families, where parents and grandparents support a community of well-adjusted children. Goddess Aset was celebrated valedictorian of her rites of passage class. Tailored for universal leadership with divine nurturing, she would set the precedence in leading not one, but 3 major solar systems at once. Goddess Aset's project would be the first of its kind in any known universe. The main star, Sirius, would support every thought in the entire galaxy. Another series of stars, called the God Star Constellation, would manage spirit in the galaxy, while a third, smaller but still powerful star would maintain matter on the 9 orbiting planets. Each planet would be nurtured by one of the original Devi 9 empires. Goddess Nebhet took a particular interest in the newly developed concept of nurturing energy from mother's milk, so that she named the new galaxy the Milky Way. Great Queen Mother Nut's empire was assigned responsibilities for the matter planet named Earth. Members of the Shata Council had to admit Goddess Nut's team was progressing beyond expectations. Many of them signed on for earthly experiences during one of its exotic 3 seasons. Goddess Nebhet agreed to design the seasons on planet Earth for nurturing objectives to grow its environment. She named the first season Kepra, of which the days 0 through 120 were set aside for planting seeds. The season at the middle of the planet's annual trip around its sun was named Re, giving it another 120 days for nurturing. Coming forth by the final 120 days before the planet completed its cycle around its sun marked a time for harvest called Autumn. But before Goddess Aset felt ready to roll out all the work she and her sea stars had completed for the new galaxy, she sensed an emotion of unbalanced energy. After consulting with her daughters, Goddess Ma'at and Sea Star Moon, they immediately went to work on the perfect manifestation for the matter planet. As Earth evolved, Goddess Aset would balance the planet's energies with a new concept called the masculine principle. To assist with this module of the project, one of Goddess Aset's favorite galactic aunts from the Academy sent to her a prototype called Asar 1.1. Working to deploy the new energy type, Goddess Aset fell deeply in love with Asar, who was in many ways her twin, but still her opposite. She appreciated how Asar was able to keep her thoughts well ordered and protected her feminine discipline. As the Shata Council reviewed the special gift of Asar for project approval, they worried the gender balance lacked diversity. So, to Goddess Nebhat, they commissioned a male principal from the Academy to be called Set, a counterpart for Goddess Nebhat. But the memorandum on attributes to design Set with extremes to passion must have missed Goddess Aset's collaboration ether. The Academy scholars labeled the science of selfishness with a term called ego, especially for Set. Requirements for Set to debut ego were provided to developers by a secretive committee of Shata Queen Mothers who sent instructions to make sure he exhibited a wide range of emotions toward drama and romance. The secretive scholars rationalized ego would enhance the earthly experience. As planned, Goddess Aset kept the Sirius solar systems at peace. But what she didn't expect was having to birth a special sun for the Milky Way when ego got out of control between Natur's Asar and Set on Earth. Natar Asar, being the perfect gentle male principle and responsible for the energy of spirit, attempted to stay out of the way of Natar Set and his passionate dramatizations. But Natar Set was living up to his deity design to constantly provide sensationalism to thought. So much so that Natar Set dismembered Natar Asar by brainwashing the Assyrian followers on Earth to forget their ancestral connections. Goddess Aset could have easily remembered everything, but not to cause a gender imbalance, as warned by her daughter Goddess Ma'at. Goddess Aset derived an even better solution, supported by her wise daughter Goddess Shesset. And from the crisis, the Milky Way received a savior of its own, a new son from Goddess Aset's personal sacred womb. The Shata Council warned Goddess Aset birthing a son to be a risky move, giving Natar Set another target for his passion to create drama. But Goddess Aset assured them her plan be more powerful than the control of emotional vibrations, and ensured them of her dedication to bring the project to completion for timely ascension by any means necessary. Chapter 0, The Lioness Legacy. Shaitan, chronological time. Shaitan, universal age, Pisces. Long count vibration, high. Earth calendar year, 2012. Season day, Kepra 000. Sun hours, 0000 Herus. Goddess Neith. Hotep, 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 Mommy and Sea Stars. I feel warmth from all of you across the Sirius Ethers Network, sending my vibrations from a most beautiful black sand beach here on Earth. Goddess Het Heru. Jumbo Sea Star Neith, feeling your vibration too. You could be a walking rainbow, all colorful and flashing energy from the moisture in that earth air. Goddess Sekhmet. And the flowers dancing around your light image fit you like a glove, Diva. But how did you get that honeybee to keep daubing you with floral essence every 2 earth minutes? Goddess Aset. Thank you, my daughter Neith, goddess of the mommy water. And to all the project team goddesses, we come together again before the dawning of Aquarius to discuss the ascension of the free will planet. My daughter Shasette, goddess of all knowledge, I ask, are the earth kingdoms ready? Goddess Shasette. No, Mommy Aset, I must report, earth is still not ready. The plant and animal kingdoms have fully evolved, but the Pisces era will end with severe systematic internal societal illness, CC, a condition that lowers the consciousness in the human kingdom. Goddess Aset. Didn't you report the supremacy system problem was put under control a few solar revolutions ago? Goddess Shasette. Yes, about that. Sea Star Moon and Natur Amun-Ra worked together to change the light spectrum on Earth. This way, the humans wouldn't see skin colors. However, since most humans have lost their Afrakan connections that bonds them to their ancestors, the supremacy system mutated into CC. Unfortunately, humans have chosen to live in constant chaos with themselves, animals, plants, and their planet. Goddess Aset. What is your explanation for this choice of chaos, my daughter Ma'at, goddess of balance that comes from justice, truth, and order? Goddess Ma'at. Mommy Aset. It can mostly be attributed to patriarchy system we agreed to for the age of Aries. Since that astrological transition, the male principal ego has used CC to suppress the divine feminine energy. CC devolves the human experience to the illusion of justice for men only. Destruction and hiding of the truth by way of miseducation and psychological warfare to destabilize unity. The CC philosophy they program is perpetuated by fear of something their high priest conjured, an illusion called she-devil. Goddess Sekhmet. Ha! She-devil? Are you joking? The humans created an earth deity? Goddess Shasat. Truth is, instead of blaming themselves for deteriorating moral consciousness, they reversed their words she is live to a concept called she evil. Goddess Aset. I am serious. This is no laughing matter. Goddess Het Heru, please send message immediately to your counterbalance, my son Heru. In that patriarchy negotiation meeting going on, tell him I said to add to the agenda an item to end this ridiculous practice called she-devil, and remind him not to bother my sea star, Goddess Nebhet, while she is focused on keeping Set in order during that meeting. Goddess Het Heru. Yes, Queen Mother, and Heru sends his love across the Sirius ether. Goddess Shesset. Mommy Aset, I'm afraid getting rid of she-devil will only solve the issue for a few vibrations. At the start of this new age of Aquarius, many will question the lack of logic in their religious organizations. But an energy force of chaos has developed into an unnatural vibration called devolution. As you designed it, by nature, all living vibrations use controlled, purposeful thought to act in ways that improve upon their essence and thereby raise their electrical magnetism. Using this magnetism on Earth, the evolution creates the lived experience. But when that force is reversed, it becomes an unbalanced collection that casts a spell on the term she lived in the opposite natural direction to become a curse called she-devil. The she-devil is not a mystical being, but rather the unnatural process of devolving instead of evolving. The planet's worst enemy is the she-devil's sophisticated tool labeled CC. CC was designed and developed to perpetuate devolution by biocoding the DNA of human beings to deactivate purposeful creativity. Unfortunately, almost every organized society on the free will planet is plagued by CC. Some groups are more impacted than others. CC and its devolution forces aim to keep the vibration of Earth low so that it will never ascend within the galaxy. Earth's inhabitants constantly suffer from devolution and its CC tools, no matter what socio-economic background. Goddess Sekhmet. Yes, I know the weapons of this CC: the cave, the gun, the catfish, the drug, the porn, the greed, and the sexy. Just a short list I've identified. Goddess Neat. Mommy Aset and Sea Stars, please enjoy this most delicious refreshment. It is made of fresh coconut water, only found on Earth from the ancient palm tree. Goddess Aset. Yes, I remember giving the coconut trees to the inhabitants of Earth, a perfectly pH-balanced water to drink of its fruit. Unfortunately, the humans have forgotten the benefits of their natural environment and choose to drink poisons recycled from their own waste. Goddess Neat. And Mommy Aset, mixed in the drink are other wonderful fruits you gave to Earth, out of love for the planet and its inhabitants, especially the humans. The banana you created provides potassium to their bio bodies to help absorb melanin from their sun, your sun. And to protect their immune systems, you provided strawberries and other citric fruits. What you all feel coming through the ether right now is only a fraction of the great and beautiful resources of this wonderful planet called Earth. Goddess Aset. Goddess Neve, my passionate daughter, it's obvious you want to protect this planet and preserve its forces of nature for all eternity. Even I admit the elixir you've provided us during this meeting wakes me up to the beauty and wonderment we created out of the dark waters of the cosmos. Your rainbow outfit brings hope for Earth to your sea stars. But we must seriously reflect that all you are showing us now is but the best parts of the earthly experience. Goddesses Mayat and Shasat are describing concerns for why the Milky Way Tri-God Star Project is not on schedule to meet harvesting energy timeframes promised to the Shata Council. Goddess Het Heru. Yes, Queen Mother, and to add to the list of risks, Heru worries for Goddess Nebhet's negotiations to end patriarchy on Earth at the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. Heru says Neterset is filibustering the meetings and won't let anyone else speak. But this is far better than when Neterset was dismembering other gods and scorching planet land into deserts. Goddess Maya. Exactly, sister. Sea star Het Heru, goddess of creation by birth. How can Earth ascend with the male deities are conflicted, unbalanced gender quality? Chaos. Goddess Aset. This Earth situation is pretty serious indeed. My Asar says to me before getting on the network for this meeting, we should destroy Earth and create something new. Oh no, Mommy said. Did Natur Asar really say that? He would destroy my forces of nature just like that? Goddess Het Heru. Oh no, Queen Mother. Would you destroy Earth and its son, my Heru, with it? Goddess Aset. No, of course, I could never destroy my son, Heru. But Asar has full rights over spirit, with privileges and powers to send another disaster to Earth. He says we need to force the humans to reset their thoughts back to African connections again. Goddess Shasset. We will need another astrological age of evolution to accommodate a reset. Goddess Het Heru. But I've helped Mommy Nebhet develop some wholesome family and households down there already. Not many are practicing African connectivity, but a few have returned to balancing the feminine masculine energies, self-sufficiency, remembering the ancients, re-educating themselves and the children, all by connecting with nature again. Goddess Shasset. A few is not enough to raise the vibrations on Earth for ascension. We need full restoration of Ma'at. Goddess Ma'at. Full restoration will require the planet to return to its natural environment. The humans will need to go back to practicing the 42 positive affirmations. The Tri-God Star Project needs Sea Star Sekhmet, goddess of divine healing, to return to Earth. Goddess Sekhmet. Growl. Wait a minute. I formally retired from missions on Earth. The last time I went down there, at Amun-Ra's request, he changed his mind in the middle of the task and made me look like a drunken, fierce killer. I'm happy to know I still have a few shrines left dedicated to me by self-initiates. If I go back down there, there must be full commitment to the mission, and I must have full control from concept to release. Goddess Ma'at. Well, I'm sure the male deities will be caught up in their patriarchy negotiations for another full age, you shouldn't receive any interference from them if your task stays on time frames. Goddess Sekhmet. Growl. I'm as serious as our loving mother of the Sirius star. I'm not going back under the previous conditions. Goddess Aset. Beautiful goddess, serious as I am, what does your Illyrian heart require to complete the proposed mission? Goddess Sekhmet. Loving Queen Mother, I need full autonomy of the project with no executive interference. I want control of the forces of nature on Earth. Goddess Neek. The temple of Mamiwata. Yes, getting back to the beginning is best. Sea Star Sekhmet, will you be using the lioness path to reactivate the sacred mounds of Olmecra as well? Goddess Shasset. FYI, Sea Stars, the territories of Olmecra are now called America by the humans. Lower Olmecra is located along the southern United States, and the islands of the ancient sea are called the Caribbean. Goddess Sekhmet. Queen Mother, I want to select my own team from Earth and the cosmos. I want neutralization privileges put on all male deity tools of war. And here is the list of warrior queens I want. Goddess Aset. These are no warrior queens. These are self-initiates from your earthly shrines and home altars on Lower Olmecra. Why not use the Amazons of Amun-Ra? Goddess Sekhmet. If it comes to rollout of Plan B, these self-initiates won't be corrupted, and they will provide pivotal change at the vortex of Mu on Khalifa Island. Their loyalty is indestructible. Without on-planet direction and guidance, these women are mothers to both biological and community children. Sought me out using African alchemy while denouncing CC. My self-initiates are already using modern technology to counter CC. They actively practice the power of the Ankh, balancing masculine energies when needed. No other humans on the planet vibrate as high as these and will lead by example for the ascension of the planet. Goddess Maat. And may I ask, my divine Lyrian sea star, what is Plan B? Goddess Sekhmet. For details on Plan B, please consult the Queen Mother of Sirius. But I will say 144,441 of my initiates will get Earth ascended by any means necessary. Growl. Goddess Aset. So be it then. But I must insist you also call on the forces of the Khalifa Queens, since they are indigenous to Olmecra. You will appreciate their wisdom and support. Goddess Sekhmet. Really? You trust me to command the most revered Amazons ever to be energized in the cosmos? Only Neter Ptah knows where to find them. Goddess Aset. Neter Ptah may be their mother-father, but I personally know their home star system. The Kali Queens are wonder women with expert knowledge in using the forces of nature. They are subject matter experts to information unknown to Neter Ptah's masculine principle. But my precious lioness daughter, Be aware the Team Sea Stars are not feeling this vibration we are having right now. Whenever we collaborate about the Kali Queens, we will use this secure channel of the Sirius network where no others can sense our vibrations. Goddess Aset. My daughter Het Heru, please send message to Heru that Goddess Sekhmet is returning to Earth. Be sure he informs the other male deities she has full autonomy over all the planet's forces of nature. We will resume this meeting at the dawning of Aquarius to do a follow-up and get a full report from Goddess Shesset on Goddess Sekhmet's progress. Goddess Sekhmet. Thank you, Queen Mother. Asante Sana. Goddess Het Heru. Queen Mother, Heru has communicated with a few of the Natur, and they are very excited to send their jaguars and other cosmic tools to assist Goddess Sekhmet. Goddess Aset. Ankh Ujat Seneb. All goddesses. See you coming forth by day. Ashe. Chapter 1. Blue Lotus Petal. Chronological time, Chateau. Universal age, Aquarius. Long count vibration, low. Earth calendar year, 2016. Season day, Re, 183. Sun hours, 1513 Herus. City council officials with approved vacation were called in to work the Friday before their 4th of July holiday. Most were upset to spend the day driving all over town, removing flyers posted on every utility pole in Desfonto, Texas. Some smiled at the rebellious act, keeping the flyers to share with friends and family. The Resource Authority chief had threatened the neighborhood group he labeled urban troublemakers that breaking city policy to advertise their unauthorized rally events would not be advisable. But despite the mayor's mandate to have the polls completely cleared, the flyers kept getting replaced by morning, coming forth by day. It was decided in the May meeting how many flyers would be needed to cover every utility pole in the city with at least 10 pieces of literature each. Members of Desfonto Citizens for Progressive Education, DC4PE, organized and met south of the Dallas city limits. The first suggestion for distribution was to place the flyers on the vehicles of people attending the upcoming 4th of July celebration in the municipal park. But the idea was scratched when an owner of a late model BMW explained sensitivity of car alarms. Group organizers wanted to work smart and not hard, so another suggestion was dished to stand outside the supermall to pass the flyers out to shoppers during the holiday weekend. The final agreed upon approach would be to assign each member a utility pole to decorate with 10 flyers under the cover of dark. Desfonto, Texas gives the vibration of a small incorporated city of retirees who grew up in the southern part of Dallas known as Sycamore Ridge. The Ridge was once characterized for its large demographic of mega churches, high school state championships, and barbecue joints. Retirees from the Ridge who didn't leave the Dallas Metroplex at adulthood moved south as they prospered in their professions and settled into large homes in Desfonto. At one time, citizens of the Ridge had complained to their city council how their tax dollars were disproportionately being spent to build new modern schools in developing parts of Dallas. The Ridge classrooms were becoming aged and dilapidated. Most of the buildings went without climate control during the hot, humid months and rarely received major or minor fixes. After years of heated meetings downtown, the residents of the Ridge agreed the fastest way to get their children quality education conditions was to close their aging neighborhood structures and bus their students to the newer schools across town. Before busing, the Ridge had been a close-knit community of small single-family homes with large backyards, Moorish architectural commercial buildings, community-based churches and mosques, alongside soul food restaurants. But the neighborhood transformed after the mandate of school busing. Parents who could afford it moved to the new developing neighborhoods so their children wouldn't have to ride for hours to school. And somehow, the absence of children in the community began to depress the atmosphere. The Ridge became a destination for the purchase of recreational drugs and territories for gang violence. Dallas media constantly profiled the Ridge as an example of systematic internal societal illness, CC. But even as the concerns of neighborhood problems in the Ridge had yet to spill into the most southern suburbs of Dallas County, every citizen of Desfonto had some connection to the Ridge, where extended family lived, they attended church or owned businesses. No one in the organization was afraid of getting caught for littering the utility poles. Each member of DC for PE had completed a 3-month training on the ancient Haitian tradition of the Lioness Path. Professional development was conducted by the well-known and accomplished sociologist, psychologist, and African alchemist at the local college by the name of Dr. Ben Aten. His coursework included how to harness self-discipline through thought control and commitment to action versus reaction. Dr. Aten's most recent breakthrough was deciphering what he called the face of CC, a 3-dimensional combination of intuition, sight, and sound. Members of DC for PE were trained to recognize the sirens that morphed into the sound of trumpets, and what it means when the colors blue and red are divided by white, ways to decode CC forces. When all members had successfully completed their Lioness Path training, Dr. Aten certified the group ready to start their movement to raise awareness and vibrations in their communities in a non-confrontational manner. But after assessing concerns in the Ridge, the group decided to sponsor its first rally on the 4th of July to address recent incidents where psychological trauma was being profiled against its citizens. As terms of endearment, members of DC for PE addressed each other using family titles. One sister suggested facilitating the rally at one of the Desfonto parks. It was their hopes the diverse political agendas of the mayor and city council would support their grassroots efforts. But to no avail, not only was the group rejected by their neighborhood leaders, but the non-progressive resource authority chief added a note to the rejection response. Any such activity as proposed would be met by newly purchased riot gear to include a fully functional military-grade tank. Group leaders were surprised by the pushback received trying to secure a place to host the event. They quickly realized locations purchased and maintained by their tax dollars were off limits to the group and its mission. Requests for park permits were denied for all 12 municipal parks in Desfonto for one vague reason or the other. The June DC for PE meeting held after the city officials' rejection letter, turned out to be the longest gathering yet for its members. The passionate meeting broke one of the principles of self-discipline as members met past sundown, ignoring African alchemy training to keep in sync with their circadian rhythms. Obviously irritated, one senior citizen member stood and commanded silence amidst the outburst of annoying sidebars. Once a hush could be maintained, the elder began from where she stood. "Stop complaining. This ain't nothing new for us. And ain't none of us ever get nothing worth having just by asking. I taught y'all to take control and expect y'all do that now at this moment. I said take it." Tamara, walking with 10 flyers in hand, desperately wanted to get them posted before rushing to the airport to catch a flight to Miami. July was the perfect time for her to get away for a 10-day vegan retreat with her former college roommate. She hated to leave her beloved husband to deal with their middle child's begging to go to a party, but her college roommate wouldn't take no for an answer this time. Everything Tamara had wished for her life was pretty much on track. With a loving husband and 3 beautifully healthy children, she served with passion the homeschooling network she had organized and ran for over 16 years. Tamara felt balanced in her life, but for some reason, peace was not finding her lately. Desfonto, the quiet community she and the family lived in, had been the home environment she'd envisioned to raise children. Its municipal community infrastructure kept big city Dallas bureaucracy miles away and provided she and her husband flexibility to get daily chores completed within their work schedules without traffic congestion. But something was changing in the atmosphere. Neighbors had stopped coming together in the community park on evenings to share how their days were going and to laugh at the dogs chasing the squirrels. The community garden was full of weeds. No one wanted to tend it anymore after an unfortunate but traumatizing incident. One particular late summer evening, Desfonto Resource Authority officers had violently arrested a youth running through what was then perfectly aligned raised beds of growing fruit and vegetables. The high school senior was taking a shortcut through the garden to get to football practice. He suffered permanent brain damage when the resource authorities had taken him for what they called a wanted gang thug. Tamara could feel the fear that had taken over the community. No one wanted to talk about the unfortunate incident, not even municipal officials. Lately, deep-set pressure between her eyebrows irritated her every time she noticed a Desfonto patrol car slowing to observe anything and anyone out and about the city. With the haze of indifference covering the neighborhood, Tamara began to look more closely at her middle child's recent anxiousness. It was only a few weeks past that her daughter, Janae, had befriended the little girl hosting a party. Janae had also begun experiencing flu-like symptoms after meeting with the same little girl at a fast food restaurant to eat fried chicken for the first time. Since college years, Tamara had become a vegetarian and raised the children without processed meat in fear of polluting their bodies with growth hormones, toxic nitrates, and artificial antibiotics. But Janae would be the most curious of her 3 children, and naturally the one to want to experience what children outside her homeschool network were eating. During her first field trip with the Kemetic School of Primary Education Network, Janae talked another little girl, there for the journey, into removing her headscarf. The little girl was bragging to Janae about the curls in her red hair, and Janae asked to see the hairstyle. When the trip facilitator questioned Little Red why she had removed the scarf of her cultural traditions, Red began crying uncontrollably, making it hard for the facilitator to retie the scarf to the student's head. Red continued to cry until finally going home early from the trip. The truth on why the scarf had come off would have not been understood by the trip facilitator, except Janae was curious why her new friend had left the trip early. Janae explained how she wanted to see the girl's hairstyle. That night, Tamara and her husband, Farahi, gave Janae every opportunity to ask about the differences people have in culture, traditions, and preferences. Janae cried herself to sleep when she fully understood that the little red-headed girl's parents had probably taught her it an act of respect to cover her head. Understanding her curiosity may have offended the girl's accepted tradition, Janae had a hard time processing what she was learning. But Tamara and Farahi made it clear to Janae it is never wrong to be curious with a pure heart. At the next field trip, Janae asked her mother to wrap her head for the day. But as Janae walked across the parking lot to the field trip buses, she noticed bright red curls blowing in the wind, totally uncovered. She asked Little Red why she wasn't wearing the scarf this time. Little Red, noticing Janae's scarf, pulled her own head cover from her backpack. She slowly but perfectly wrapped her own head by herself. As young children, Tamara and Farahi lived in single-family homes only a few blocks away from their elementary school. But when their neighborhood schools closed, community children stopped playing together. It wasn't until one of the skating rinks in a nearby suburb added R&B music to their playlist that many of the Ridge youth found themselves back socializing together. Coincidentally, their neighborhood skating rink had closed shortly after school busing, along with the Youth Freedom Center swimming pool. By the time Tamara and Farahi were juniors in two different high schools, they barely recognized each other when it came time to couple up for a slow skate. As the two talked, they realized they only lived a few blocks apart. But with catching the bus before sunrise and arriving home late in the day from school in the evenings, the two never saw each other except on skate nights. The September session Tamara and Farahi slow skated together was the first of many. They both graduated from their respective high schools with honors and earned scholarships to the same historically black college. Tamara's mother was insistent she do 3 things upon arriving to her new environment in California for her freshman year in college. Be polite to her professors, go out of her way to be nice to her roommate, and find a church home. The instructors were more friendly and professional than those she had in high school. So Tamara didn't have any problems with her mother's first request. But upon meeting her roommate, Tamara was very hesitant things would work out. The large gold ankh that dangled from Shesa's neck called to Tamara like no other piece of jewelry she had ever seen. The round edges on the top of the symbol hung from a gold chain and were supported by a long pedestal of strength that emphasized wings coming from the sides. At their first meeting, Tamara's eyes widened to see Shesa wore a large afro. The hairstyle reminded her of an obsidian lion's mane and vibrated like a halo. It took Tamara 2 weeks to find the courage to ask Shesa what the Ankh symbol meant and why she wouldn't eat meat. But Shesa was relieved to finally explain her connection to her ancestors. She and Tamara would share the cost of many a road trip to visit the shrine of Sekhmet at Point Magoo. Tamara made the shrine her new church home. It was their final year at the University of Southern San Diego State when the couple's skaters decided their friendship was strong enough to pursue a romantic relationship. Before Farahi asked Tamara on their first official date, he solicited advice from his father back in Texas and followed it with a wise and strategic move to consult Tamara's father, who had retired in Arkansas. To Farahi's surprise, the two senior men knew each other from the Ridge and had worked on church projects together. With well wishes and good luck granted, Farahi asked Tamara to a romantic private dinner on the beach. When Tamara accepted, she expected nothing more than a bag packed with chicken sandwiches, but she looked forward to spending the private time with an old friend who had been supportive of her endeavors during their time away from home in California. When Farahi's old Volvo brakes finally stopped squealing, he parked the big blue station wagon near the shoreline. Tamara was glad to finally get some fresh air outside the front seat that smelled like old books. Farahi jumped from his side of the old car and ran to the back. Tamara figured he was opening the trunk of the wagon to get his bag of food, but was pleasantly surprised to find him opening her passenger door. Farahi was offering to help her out of the car, no food bag in hand. Of the hundreds of times Tamara had visited the only beach open to the public in San Diego, the night sky was more unusually dark than others. She looked out at the ocean over the table set with white linen cloth, beige china dishes, polished silver, and crystal drinking glasses. It was only by reflection of the bright first quarter moon on the ocean she could tell where the sky met the water. Farahi had called in a favor of his roommate, who had left college to study the culinary arts. The soon-to-be chef, along with a few culinary cohorts, stood ready to serve Tamara and Farahi a 5-course meal on the beach. Tamara wasn't only breathless, but speechless. She felt like a queen with her king. A Riesling wine was served with dessert, and the dinner crew left the couple to private time. It was well into the evening, and the tide was coming in when Tamara pushed her triple-layered chocolate cake plate away. Somewhere in the distance, soft music was playing, and Farahi wanted her in his arms for their first slow dance together. Facing the ocean, Tamara felt safe in Farahi's long, skinny arms. His skin smelled fresh to her senses, and she imagined floating in the middle of the Pacific Sea with no fear, as the rhythm of the music encouraged her imagination. The trumpets in the song, accompanied by drums, set the pace for their steps from side to side. Tamara was just about to close her eyes and enjoy the moment when she noticed a large, shiny ball bobbing up and down in shallow parts of the water near them. Tamara's analytical mind would not allow her to dismiss the color, shape, and movement of the ball that was steadily washing up towards them with the tide. Once the crystal ball hit sand, it purposefully began to roll directly into the couple's path. Everything happened so fast. Tamara didn't remember taking a breath in between. The crystal ball rolled right up to Tamara's feet. A half woman, half dolphin swam through the permeable sides of the ball and stood on dorsal fin before her. Farai wasn't seeing or hearing a thing and continued to dance. In the left hand of the merwoman, she handed Tamara a small copper ankh. Tamara, by natural reflex, took the ankh into her left hand. From her right hand, the merwoman slipped a wooden ankh into Farai's back jean pocket. While Farai was still not seeing or hearing anything, the merwoman swam through the air, back into her crystal ball, and rolled it back into the water. Tamara watched the ball bob against the waves. Eventually, its shimmering light gave way to deep waters. The graduation party back in Texas doubled as a surprise wedding reception for most of the family. Again, Ferrari was committed to asking permission from both sides of kinship before he even asked Tamara to marry him. Walking along the same California shoreline for their first date, the skinny but now taller Ferrari pulled Tamara into the cold rising tide. She screamed in opposition, struggling to keep her hair dry. Somehow, Ferrari was able to lift her completely above the rushing water. He looked into her eyes and promised to keep her safe if she would marry him. Tamara and Ferrari had secured the ankhs given to them by the mystical being on their first date to gold chains. But on that early evening, the amulets began to shimmer and send beams of light towards the third quarter moon high in the sky. Tamara could see the crystal ball coming towards them over Farahi's shoulder and wondered if he would be able to see it this time. Ferrari's facial expression reminded Tamara he was waiting for an answer. But Tamara was not going to say a word until she understood what was to become of this new encounter with the merwoman. Tamara's stare over Ferrari's shoulder made him turn and almost drop her. He witnessed something coming towards them, clearly heading in their direction. With the strength of a lion, Ferrari turned towards the beach sand and somehow half swam, half ran, carrying Tamara. He was heading back to the safety of the blanket they had brought to sit on while wave gazing. Making his escape with Tamara, Ferrari never turned to look back. But Tamara watched as the crystal ball never slowed in its destination to the couple. Gently, Ferrari lowered a wet Tamara to the blanket and almost collapsed from exhaustion. By the time the crystal ball had reached them on the sand, Ferrari was well into a deep sleep. As Tamara had expected, the merwoman she now knew to be Mami Wata swam through the air from the crystal ball and stood straight upwards before her again. Mami Wata's strands of green and black hair were knotted in mounds decorated by cowrie shells. She spoke to Tamara's thoughts. "The stars are overjoyed with you, Tamure. You waited and found your soulmate, even though he doesn't know who you are yet. Now, 1 + 1 must be 3. I am here with the spirit of Goddess Heteru to bless you and your womb." As with the last meeting, Tamara was too surprised and excited to form words, so she watched as Mami Wata air swam to the wet t-shirt that covered her stomach. and Tamara could feel the rubbery warm feelings of Mommy swimming inside her. Farai woke from his power nap with wide eyes. He immediately looked for Tamara and asked, "So, do you say yes?" Tamara was confused as to what he had remembered, but she smiled and answered with a "yes" anyway. On the way back to their dorm rooms, Tamara hated the sticky feeling of wet clothes on the tattered leather seats of Ferrari's old Volvo. But the discomfort was not enough to complain. Ferrari couldn't stop talking about the shark that almost attacked them in the water. Even though his excitement seemed genuine, Tamara kept quiet. She had never witnessed Ferrari so braggadocious. Something deep inside her suggested she needed to let him do his thing and encourage him to want to marry soon. The two had already become three. The guests at the party were served from two sheet cakes. One displayed a photo of Tamara and Farahi's master's degrees in hand at their graduation ceremony. On the second cake, a woman and man embraced in the middle of a large golden ankh. Tamara's aunts and cousins pinched the blossoming cheeks around her chin. They laughed and called the fullness of her face baby fat. A few co-workers from Farahi's internship with Castro Systems International were the only people at the party, not from the Ridge. But they were more than enjoying the soul food and old school R&B music. Farahi's father sat with the co-workers, trying to get them to agree that working remotely from home is a setup for laziness. The elder found it hard to imagine Farahi would be doing his job from an office in he and Tamara's home. Farahi's dad didn't like the thought of his son would not be needing to comb his hair, drive in rush hour traffic, or take a lunch to work. The whole idea sounded less like a real job to Farahi's father, as he complained to his son's co-workers. But the former interns kept their mouths full of food to keep from disagreeing with him. They too had accepted remote work from home positions with the Yucatan Peninsula-based company and were looking forward to their first day of work next week. Ferrari's father's argument included how Ferrari should be looking to make more money with the company downtown and how Ferrari would regret being at the house so much. Ferrari's mother noticed the tortured look of the ex-interns, and she decided to rescue them by asking the dad to accompany her to the car for the graduation, wedding, and nursery gifts they had purchased for the couple and their first grandbaby. Just when Tamara thought she would sit long enough to wipe sweat from her fat cheeks after being on the dance floor, the DJ mixed in the 12-inch version of Aqua Boogie by Parliament Funkadelic. The child in her womb leapt first, and then her feet forced her back onto the dance floor as the rhythm of the music took control. Snapping her fingers overhead, she almost completely stopped swaying to the contagious beat when she recognized a beautiful, mature woman dancing arm's length away. The woman wore a blue-green, floor-length maxi dress that shimmered like the Caribbean Sea. Her afro hair could be mistaken for threads of 24-karat gold reaching for the sky. Mami Wata moved with the fluidity of what could be legs under the dress, but Tamara knew to be a hidden dorsal fin. No one else seemed to be focusing on the mystical woman. Party people watched the intensity of Tamara's dance to the lyrics of the song and began cheering her on. Once Ferrari caught sight of the commotion, he rushed to Tamara's side to dance along. Tamara looked away from the merwoman but for a second to see Ferrari doing his usual nerd dance moves. But when Tamara looked back to see Mommy Water again, the merwoman was swimming through the air and out the nearest exit of the Desfonto Community Center. Tamara's substitute taught in the San Diego Independent School District throughout college, but was never motivated to become a full-time teacher. Ferrari was surprised when she and a sister from the Point Mugu shrine named Hathar suggested they start a homeschool network months before Tamara was to give birth to her first child. In her final trimester, Ferrari worried when Tamara needed to drive in Dallas traffic to meet with education officials and do presentations for parents interested in the network. Most of the time, Ferrari wasn't able to leave his home office to accompany her, so he instituted a family security model to be adopted. All family members must always travel in pairs or a group and be home before dark. Tamara resisted at first, suggesting she get a cell phone to keep him informed on how she was. But Ferrari had worked on a project as an intern with Castro Systems International that provided research data that cell phones present dangerous radiation poisoning to pregnant women and their unborn children. Many times it was inconvenient for Tamara to work within the constraints of their family security plan. Sometimes she would have to bribe the teenager next door to go to her meetings, and she always arrived home before dark to keep her husband's mind at ease. Chapter 2, Coming Forth by Day. Chronological time, Chateau, Universal Age, Aquarius. Long count vibration, low. Earth calendar year, 2016. Season day, Ray, 183. Sun hours, 1925, Eros. In a hurry to go on vacation and not following the family security model would forever impact the family. Tamara had begged her husband to agree to her going to the NC for a PE meeting 2 blocks away alone. Farahi wanted to believe the family safe walking in their neighborhood alone, and figured Tamara not driving wouldn't attract harassment from the Questionable Resource Authority patrol. Reluctantly, Farahi agreed to watch the girls and do homework with them while Tamara attended the DC for PE meeting. He was hoping their son Nefer would be able to accompany Tamara to the meeting, but Nefer had qualified for the regional championship chess tournament bracket that same evening. Tamara didn't want Ferrari to bring the girls with him. In the past, they hampered her effectiveness to facilitate the meeting agenda. So for the first time, since Tamara and her husband came together to build their family unit, she was breaking all their hard and fast rules. Tamara was walking alone, unprotected, near sundown. With a very short window to return home to catch the latest flight to Miami, Tamara was cutting it close to attend the meeting before the trip with Shessa. It was her luck she had been assigned to post flyers near the meeting location. Even though Tamara felt the rally contradicted with their training to remain non-confrontational, she figured the least she could do is post her flyers before leaving on vacation. Flyers in hand, Tamara was distracted with excitement on thoughts of how to quickly get her announcements to her assigned utility pole. She almost bumped into her neighbor Jamal, kneeling near the sidewalk. Jamal had recently moved to the neighborhood after taking a position as one of the high school counselors. Tamara felt bad for not formally welcoming him to the community when she saw him moving into the house on the cul-de-sac. As usual, she was busy at the time, getting her son to swim competition and Janae to piano practice. "Good evening, Mr. J," Tamara was quick to say before Jamal even noticed her. Jamal returned her greeting without looking in her direction. He was busy with something in a rose bush. Tamara waited and watched as Jamal gently removed a young black bird stuck deep in the bush of thorns. The black chick was in pain and too scared to move. Once Jamal placed the fuzzy ball of feathers on the sidewalk, he watched what she would do next. The jet black chick could barely lift her head, but was definitely staring straight into the eyes of Jamal. But both clearly captivated with each other. Tamara decided to keep walking, figuring she would go by Jamal's house after vacation and invite him to dinner with the family one day. "Hey, you! Stop where you are! Right now, girlie!" were the words she could hear through the sirens that began to sound like trumpets. As feared, the reflection on the gray concrete roadway flashed blue and red lights divided by white lines. Immediately, all that entered her mind was, "Will I survive?" Tamara knew she hadn't committed any crime. She had yet to post her flyers, but her intuition was telling her she was in dire danger. "Options, options, what are my options?" she whispered to herself while counting to 3 in Kiswahili, moja, mbili, tatu. The lioness path came to mind. She began taking deep breaths through her nose, exhaling by mouth. But fear began to grab at her legs, and it was getting harder to keep walking. The left foot became out of sync with the right, and she felt sharp pains to her back. To her knees she went. Her heart tried to rapidly send blood to locations throughout her body that were leaking fluid to the sidewalk. Tamara thought she would fall forward and her face prepared to meet the ground. Her thoughts took her back to the lioness path training. Sitting cross-legged for support, Tamara reached for the Ankh symbol hanging from her gold necklace with her left hand, and she began drawing a solid circle over her head with her right palm, asking the ancestors for protection. The winds began to blow violently, and all city sounds went mute following her first deep vibrational growl. Above Tamara, a roaring sound intensified that seemed to completely stop her heart. The strength of the wind lifted her to a standing position as her arms opened in ka pose from her Kemetic yoga practice. It still hadn't dawned on Tamara. She had been shot multiple times. She could feel pain limited to her neck down. Messages in her melanin continued to transmit to her brain for options, options, options. Feeling approaching energy between her eyebrows, the thought, "Second, let the healing begin," entered her mind. There were smells, tastes, and sounds she didn't recognize. Eyes closed, her surroundings became darker, but she could see energy outlines of the trees and grass beyond the sidewalk. Behind her, she sensed something close enough to touch. Another set of smells and sounds were moving around her until it stopped in front of her. Fear was no longer coming for Tamara when she lunged with animal agility and fury. She mauled the two Desfonto Resource Authority patrolmen so fast a witness would have sworn there were two lionesses. The roar overhead was shaking Tamara at her core. The black jean pants, green t-shirt, and red hoodie she wore to the meeting had been replaced by a fitted, sleeveless red one-piece maxi dress. Tamara's exposed arms were completely covered in gold rods flexible enough to be thread. Silver and copper cords connected to the golden rods from her shoulders to her claws, and from her elbows dangled two large ankhs, matching the one she always wore around her neck. Tamara could feel energy in her legs, wrapped in precious metal cords as well. The bottom of her feet seemed to be covered by multicolored crystals, forming what might look like the sole of a shoe. Her neck was circled by the same kind of crystals on the bottom of her feet, forming a lengthy choker that extended to her chest at the beginning of her breast. And movement. She felt vibrational movement around her head, acting as a headband. Relaxing a bit, Tamara was initially convinced she was dead. There was more blood on the ground than could ever come from one person. Near her feet, a melted piece of metal extended from a burning Resource Authority uniform. Tamara continued to survey her surroundings. Another lump of burning Resource Authority uniform lay behind her. But before fear of the smoky scene could reach her stomach, Tamara felt a deep purple ball glowing in her right hand. The ball's electrifying pulsing seemed to be replacing the blood circulation in her whole arm. And then she felt herself rising slowly above the bloody ground. Rainbow-colored wings fell from underneath her arms and folded outwards. Tamara could see the many faces of onlookers. People were keeping their distance, but seemed to have formed a circle around the bloody scene. Most of the faces showed shock. A few were covering their mouths. Many were extending their mobile phones toward the area and capturing images. A southwesterly wind began to blow under Tamara's wings as she continued lifting higher into the warm air, high enough to see the source of high-pitched vibrations approaching. She hoped to continue elevating through the sky, escaping the location, but the sirens were silenced by the earlier lioness-like roars. Tamara couldn't stop growling, causing her entire body to vibrate. She was high enough to see at least 10 blocks away. Many more red and blue lights were rushing toward her. People were running towards the situation as well. A crowd of onlookers made an opening in the circle of bystanders, and a large black jaguar ran towards her in full-out sprint. The small bird caught in the rose bush took flight towards the sky and transformed into a giant black dove. The colossal bird, at least 6 feet or more in height, flapped her plumes in the sky with her golden beak and crystal shiny talons. The two mystical animal beings rushed into the approaching traffic of Resource Authority vehicles, overturning cars like knocking down a row of dominoes. The siren lights continued to give off light, but not one Resource Authority vehicle approaching was left functional after encounters with the jaguar and dove. The animals circled the broken cars, communicating to the occupants not to exit their vehicles. Resource Authority officers began shooting at the mystical beings out the windows of their cars, missing the fast-moving jaguar and dove and striking onlookers. The crowds watched in horror at the frantic reactions of the Resource Authority responders. Bystanders began to fall to the sidewalks and in the street. People started moving back from the scene, dragging their wounded with them. Enraged by the violence upon the innocent, Tamara let out a roar that sent each resource authority car up in flames without explosion. Silence of the night was returned. Nothing but the wind was heard or felt. The gigantic black dove opened her mighty wings and flew high into the northern sky. The jaguar ran southward into the nearby wooded creek, and Tamara, with slow, deliberate movement, resumed her ascension in the direction of the moon. Medical responders arrived without sirens or flashing lights. The flames of the Resource Authority vehicles extinguished once Tamara had disappeared into the dark sky. Emergency medical technicians, EMT, rushed to the cars to assist Resource Authority officers. Some of the officers had fainted from fear, but most simply exited their cars, walking towards the EMT in a state of shock. Screams from the crowd alerted responders to where the injured lay bleeding in the street from the Resource Authority shootings. The EMTs turned from the obviously unharmed authorities and rushed toward the wounded bystanders, and they began collecting them into ambulances. As the emergency medical vehicles drove away, the lights and sirens continued to fail to function, making it hard to clear traffic rushing to the scene. Helicopters were in the air as media outlets raced to set up equipment and begin interviewing witnesses. Chapter 3, Handled the Truth. Chronological time, Sheta, Universal Age, Aquarius. Long count vibration, low. Earth calendar year 2016. Season day, Ray 183. Sun hours 22:25 Harris. Steve, stop playing with that phone and tell me what we have here, screamed Jake, chief editor of the Texas Telegram News. I can't have my journalist printing this crazy voodoo crap in my paper. Please tell me you have video proof. In a room full of writers, photographers, and even lawyers, Steve couldn't lift his eyes from the images on his device. And for the first time, he noticed deep red colors in the tiled floor. The giant black dove flying between Resource Authority vehicles with glowing eyes and a polished golden beak was unfamiliar, but Steve knew the black jaguar and what the mystical animal stood for. To make sure, Steve had already assigned his assistant to research if the Dallas Zoo was missing any animals. The roars that silenced the sirens sent chills through Steve's entire body. He felt himself focusing on the white floor molding that separated the red tile from the blue walls. It all felt so eerie and reminded him of his home in the rainforests of Haiti. Most didn't know existed, where he was born, Kwame Ante Diop. Steve, are you even listening to me? All these people here want to know what happened out there. Then came the tap on Kwame's shoulder that made him finally look in Jake's direction. Kwame couldn't comprehend what Jake was yelling, but he could sense from Jake's moving lips Jake wanted to know something. All Kwame could articulate from his throat was a low moan. He knew what was going on, but that an explanation would make sense to the people in the room. Highly frustrated, Jake turned to Rebecca Cave, struggling with a colored contact lens that made her right eye more red than the intentional blue. Becky, what is the status of the Resource Authority officers and onlookers injured? Becky returned her hands to her notepad and began reading aloud. 21 Resource Authority officers reported to the incident. 13 were taken to the hospital for symptoms of shock. All others were released for the evening to go home. Jake interrupted her with, What the hell? You said all Resource Authority vehicles were set on fire during the ordeal. How the hell no one get burned? What about the 2 officers first on the scene that got mauled by the lioness woman? Becky looked from her writing tablet and shrugged her shoulders, all the while replying, "Dunno. The 2 officers that got mauled went home with scratches." The room exploded in rapid low murmurs of sidebars conversations. Jake was standing to try and calm the room, but exploded again. "Damn it, did anyone get physically hurt?" he screamed over the sidebars while waving his arms. Becky returned her focus to her notepad and started reading again. It looks that 33 bystanders were taken to nearby hospitals for bullet wounds. Jake looked through the room for an intended target for his next question. "Do we have reports from the hospitals?" A tall man with blonde hair shaped into a military-style buzz cut stepped to the conference table, followed by a short woman wearing thick locks that covered her entire back. "Well, Ebony here brought me a story I'm not sure I believe," exclaimed the tall blonde in a clear, confident voice. "And what the hell do you mean you don't believe?" Jake shouted at the blonde man, dressed like a cowboy on his way to a rodeo. "Move out the way so Ebony can tell me what she knows," Jake sneered and finished his thought with, "Idiot jackass," before the tall blonde moved aside. It was obvious Ebony wasn't easily intimidated by Jake's questioning. Before she began her tell-all, she made sure her hands were secured to her hips and her neck was ready to roll. "So, after the ambulances started to leave, I headed directly to the ER at Baptist Hospital in the Arts District. There were people everywhere, on gurneys and chairs on the floor. Must have been at least 12 people being treated." But before Ebony could continue, the tall blonde stuck his head back into the conversation and interjected, "Here comes the crazy part, boss." Ebony used her flexible neck to roll her eyes some 120 degrees between Jake and the tall blonde to signify rudeness. But once Ebony's head and eyes returned to Jake, she continued, "Even though there was blood everywhere on the victim's clothes," she paused and took a deep breath, "didn't no one seem to be dying or in pain?" The conference room went silent of the sidebars. At first, it seemed Jake's thin lower lip wouldn't find its way back up to the thin upper one. But before his bottom dentures completely slipped from his mouth, his spit flew out as he began another round of shouts. "What the hell? I can't deal with this damn crap. Why don't anyone just tell me what the hell is going on?" Jake shouted directly at Steve. But before Jake could take his growing frustration out on Steve Kwame, his phone device started vibrating and ringing. Shortly after answering the phone, he screamed to Becky to turn up the sound on the conference room's TV monitor. A headline scrolled across the screen, "Love Field Controller Calls 911. None of you sons of bees are getting any organs tonight to support your systematic internal societal illness," Jamal sneered into the face of a short, skinny, gray-haired man in a white jumpsuit, ready with scalpel in hand. Every bloody gunfire victim from the mystical animal incident laid secured in a white fortified corrugated box labeled "Bulletproof Blood and Organs." Soldiers in black uniforms began cutting away the plastic ties that held each patient in the corrugated boxes. Jamal used the barrel of his rifle to direct the ER patients with orders, "Everyone follow me and there won't be any more shooting." All 12 bloody, able patients jumped to their feet once their restraints were removed and hurried behind Jamal down the redwood-floored corridor to the ER exit. They all wanted to trust the stranger over their previous horror of being accidentally shot by Resource Authority aiming at mystical beings. Right outside the blue ER doors and across a wide white threshold line, the parking lot had already been cleared for an awaiting helicopter. All 12 patients boarded the helicopter. Jamal's dark tinted glasses displayed the reflecting image of the moon as he remotely controlled the helicopter towards the airport. Then Jamal pulled his purple vibrating golf ball from a compartment on his belt and disappeared from the parking lot. After watching Jamal vanish into thin air, as they had become accustomed to, the beret-wearing soldiers climbed into 2 black Hummer vehicles and drove through anything in their way towards the main road. Black helicopters with jet propulsion engines flew low and fast to Lover's Lane Airport. Bloodied but able patients jumped from the helicopter hatch doors. The lighting to runway Alpha East had been cut off by airport staff when an unidentified jumbo jet demanded clearance to land. Air traffic controllers repeatedly asked for call numbers and other flight identification when the plane mysteriously popped onto their radar screens. Luckily, no commercial airlines that frequented Lover's Lane Field were awaiting takeoffs on the Alpha East runway when the unauthorized plane stopped in midair and lowered itself down to the tarmac. An air traffic controller, new to the tower, explained he'd only seen a vertical landing done like that by a Castro Systems F-35 drone. The air traffic control supervisor on duty used his walkie-talkie and tried to contact his domestic security counterpart, but he didn't receive a response. Panicking, the supervisor used the digits from his desk phone to dial 911. 4 ramps provided access for passengers to board the mysterious jumbo jet that looked more like a large fighter plane than a commercial transport. The air traffic controllers described the jet as having stealth sleekness, armed rocket launchers, and 2 50 caliber guns with mounts. All external armament assemblies on the jet were painted gold to stand out on side of the charcoal black fuselage. Hummer vehicles with additional black beret soldiers surrounded the fighter jet, taking on passengers. As the last patient helicopter landed, Jamal could see a fleet of fast-moving white cars approaching the runway, marked Domestic Agency. Using his satellite phone, Jamal called out the direction of the incoming vehicles and continued helping bloodied but able patients off the helicopters. Once the responding white vehicles hit the tarmac, a flame of fire dropped from the sky and surrounded the jet, helicopters, and its guardians standing beside Hummers. Domestic agents braked their vehicles to a stop before the circular wall of fire and began exiting their cars. Weapons drawn, the agents started firing into the configured force of nature. Calling for agents to cease their fire, a woman dressed in a tailored red skirt and jacket walked up to the wall of fire as if it were her long-lost friend. After greeting the flames, the woman's friendly expression changed. She quickly returned to the passenger seat of her department vehicle. The woman's chauffeured vehicle sped away from the runway. Agents watching the wall of fire from outside their cars were knocked off their feet by the strong gusts of exhaust given off by the vertical lift of the jet. Within seconds, the flying transport had disappeared into the dark sky, and traffic controllers no longer could see a radar blip to track the jet. Who produced this video, damn it? And are we talking walls of fire now? Jake was tiring, and his speech began to slur. Becky stared at her notepad and began, "Well, sir, what you just saw was a paramilitary group resembling the Black Panther Party, but actually they are not even from the USA. Supposedly, this group landed at Lover's Lane Field minutes after the Flying Lioness Woman incident, and a jet drone modified with armament of an F-18 and storage transport capacity of a C-5. Hummers full of soldiers and remotely controlled helicopters rolled out of the jet and headed to the nearest hospitals." Jake's next response sent Becky to the water cooler for a cup. He sat back down at the conference table, pulling a pill from his shirt pocket. "So, since they are not domestic, where did they come from?" was Jake's more gentle reply, holding the pill with the cup of water. "Yucatan Peninsula," came across the table in a deep Moorish Latin accent. Jose was known as Joe in the newsroom, where he had been promoted from janitor to head of facilities. "Those are guardians of truth in nature," Jose reflected on his training with the Guardians in the Coba Mountains and his assignment to report fake news. Jake hid his head in his folded arms on the table. Kwame slipped out the door of the conference room. Breaking news scrolled across the TV monitor in a large blue and red banner with white words. The voice of MPABC's Rachel Maddow matched the headline. "It is reported the armed jet that took off from Dallas has been spotted over the Atlantic Ocean by a U.S. naval vessel. What you are seeing on the left are squadrons from Anthony's Air Base being scrambled to intercept, and this video footage on the right comes from the U.S. destroyer ship Barack, approved by President Khrushchev for release." Everybody in the news conference room looked on with anticipation. No one dared speak for fear Jake would chop off their heads. "We are now receiving reports the unidentified fighter jets are flying out of West Africa to intercept the mysterious armed plane of ER patients." Jake threw his empty water cup across the room. Madow's report continued. "It seems the African jets, with no identification, have flown past the ER patient's plane that is headed for the African coast. Soon the mysterious fighters will meet with U.S. aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean." Captain Donald T. Foyer was embarrassed. He didn't understand the encrypted message the officer on deck, OOD, had delivered on light blue paper. In addition to his trouble deciphering the coded message, he couldn't remember if the blue paper meant test or actual. Foyer considered himself lucky to catch a glimpse of Commander Shesa Atum walking by the bulkhead of his office. "Commander Atum, please come in here. I need something immediately," was just what the brilliant commander was hoping to hear. Not only was Commander Shesa Atum the youngest female to ever second command a battle group in any U.S. fleet, Commander Atum was a graduate of the prestigious United Nations International War Department. She had also been the most highly decorated ROTC cadet to graduate from the University of San Diego State. Commander Atum made it her mission to protect the rights of all crew women on her ship and fleet escort ships from what she called the good old boys Navy. Shesa found her purpose early in life after being attacked by two perverts at Saturday school when she was 12. The incident left her so traumatized, her parents moved from the Los Angeles area to Phoenix. Her father was a military veteran and consultant for a global special forces company. But he retired from the work disgruntled with how much the missions were controlled and manipulated by Cece. Her mother wanted to move away from Los Angeles to stop her husband from using his local resources to find the two perverts. When Shesa explained to her father what she thought she saw through her cotton dress was a jaguar attacking the perverts, he agreed to leave the matter to the forces of nature. Deliberate and slow, Commander Atum stepped over the bulkhead stop into the office painted sky blue. She casually saluted the worried captain. "How can I help you, Mr. Foya?" was her way of not acknowledging the captain as military or in command of anything. Her lack of saluting never bothered Foya. Rather, it provided a familiar environment for him when he was CEO of Mobility Energy. It was only by presidential appointment and being the brother-in-law to a joint staff of defense member that Foya became an unqualified leader of a billion-dollar government sea vessel. "These damn trifocal spectacles are bothering me again. The best eye doctor in Alabama told me these would work better on this ship that won't stop bobbing up and down." Commander Atum narrowed her eyes before beginning her half-truth. "Well, Mr. Foya, it is hurricane season, and the seas are a little more rough than usual right now. What can I do to help?" Foya wasn't sure she was being sarcastic or not. He took a few seconds of silence to closely consider her response. But after the pause, Foya remembered to get back to the official satellite message in his hands from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "Commander Atum, you have a security clearance to read this message, right?" And Foya handed the paper to Atum. Commander Atum didn't respond to his question, but rather began reading it aloud. "The U.S. destroyer ship Barak has been authorized by the President of the United States and ordered to fire upon for complete destruction any and all aircraft within its range without the following electronic signatures: Alpha 66, Omega 77, please comply immediately." Foya's eyes popped wide open at hearing the seriousness of the message. He dropped his eyeglasses to the red carpet. Looking down at the spectacles, Foya gave Commander Atum the impression he wanted her to pick them up. Without thinking better of it, she leaned forward to retrieve the glasses. But seconds later, she realized even during the crisis, Foya was attempting to stare down the only open button of her uniform top. Excited to get a peek at Commander Atum's breast, Foya let the envelope of the message slip from his hand and slowly float towards the red carpet. Instead of reaching for the spectacles, Commander Atum lifted her foot to stop the blowing envelope and purposely came down on Foya's eyeglasses. His eyes still focused on Commander Atum's open button, Foya didn't see how his eyeglasses became the crunch sound he heard. Commander Atum resumed her straight-up standing posture. Noticing she was noticing him, Foya quickly changed the subject and asked, "Oh, I know this is probably just a test. What do you think?" Commander Atum was not privileged to know the difference between the red and blue papers. But based on the last text message from Jamal, her answer should be, yes, blue is always a test, red means serious business. Foya's face relaxed. He immediately reached for his office intercom system headset to bark out orders to the operations crew on duty. He repeated the words, "This is a test. This is only a test. All on-duty personnel assumed battle-ready status. Commander Atum was in such a hurry to leave the room, she forgot, yet again, to salute Captain Foya. She headed for the ship's operations observation deck. Commander Atum relieved the officer on deck, OOD, and stood alone, facing the ocean. She pulled from her uniform pocket her personal mobile device and texted Jamal, "No worries, Nina Pendowewe." Once she verified the text was sent, she began reading a story on her device news app, posted by a reporter named Rebecca Cave. The story came out of Dallas about escaped zoo animals. The name Rebecca Cave made the location between her eyebrows vibrate. After a second swallow of her coffee, her head filled with energy when she realized the reporter was the same woman who had attacked Tamra, her former roommate, homeschool network. Commander Atum worried for Tamara's family. She wasn't quite sure they would understand why things were set in motion for her. But Commander Atum was looking forward to seeing her old roommate. Even though Tamara had no idea their vegan Caribbean cruise would turn into something a bit differently. "Princess Lala, please tell Janae to turn off her TV. It's time you girls go to bed." Ferrari knelt to the floor to reach his youngest daughter's height. Baby girl had been affectionately named Princess Lala by his wife because the 3-year-old was very insistent she take multiple naps every day. The unofficial princess padded down the long hallway of 3 bedrooms in her favorite unmatched cotton socks of orange and green. Princess Lala had a preference to wear her favorite color socks whenever she could find an unmatching pair. When her orange and green socks were not clean, she would only wear black on her feet, telling her mother any other color made her feet sweat. Going through the house, turning off all other devices that might interrupt the family's sleep, Ferrari felt a gentle tug at his shirt. "Daddy, Janae can't turn her TV off," Princess Lala spoke, looking into Ferrari's dark brown eyes, waiting for his next instruction. Before realizing he would never ask a 3-year-old to fix a TV, Ferrari turned and knelt down to ask baby girl what was wrong with the TV. Princess Lala's response sent the first of many shivers he would experience up his spine over the next 72 hours. "Janae can't turn her TV off because Janae isn't in her room, Daddy," made Ferrari stand straight up and spin in the direction of Janae's bedroom. Had he forgotten to pick her up from somewhere? Did he accidentally lock her outside? Ferrari checked his phone for a text message from his wife or reminder from the calendar. With no message from his wife, but a missed call from Janae, he immediately attempted to call Janae's 5th prepaid disposable cell phone in a year. "Please, Daddy, please. Everyone is having so much fun. And Angelica's mom said I can spend the night." Ferrari could have sworn Tamara had told him Janae was in her room with a tummy ache when his wife left for the neighborhood meeting. Watching Princess Lala go to the front door to struggle with the deadbolt, Ferrari figured Tamara was returning home from the meeting. He rushed to the foyer to greet his wife so she could settle whatever Janae was asking for. Even though Ferrari was an involved parent, he attempted to be the parent that stayed away from punishments. And he was pretty sure Tamara was going to say no to Janae's requests. Instead of his wife at the door, who should have already been home or risked missing her flight to Miami, Ferrari watched his tall oldest child, Nefer, with his back to the front door. Nefer waved, thanking the chess coach for dropping him home from the tournament. Ferrari knew Nefer was the second best thing to Tamara in dealing with Janae's begging and pleading. Nefer, did your mom say Janae could go to a party tonight? Nefer paused for a few seconds to look into his father's eyes before pulling out his own cell phone. Unlike Janae, Nefer never lost phones. Instead, his oldest son would buy parts to re-engineer his device into the latest model's technology. There was never a data charge for Nefer's phone because he always routed it to get a signal directly from the network satellite. Meanwhile, Princess Lala had become so sleepy she found herself slipping over her socked feet on the hardwood floor. Ferrari rushed to carry her off to bed, handing Nefer his phone to talk to Janae. You know Mom would never allow it, Nefer calmly spoke into Ferrari's phone. Oh, come on, Nefer. Please just cover for me this time. I never get to do anything fun like you, was Janae's way of getting to the guilt-ridden side of Nefer. Okay, but look, don't ever find yourself alone with anyone. Stay close to the crowd, and I suggest not going to sleep. Stay woke. Janae was so excited to get her brother to vouch for her, she hung up the phone before her dad returned to say goodnight. Walking swiftly out of Princess Lala's room to continue his conversation with Janae, Ferrari sadly noticed Nefer had already placed his cell phone on the table. Picking the device up, he confirmed Janae had hung up. The device screen was black. Nefer tried not to stare at his dad's disappointment when he twisted the truth that his mom had not refused Janae's request to spend the night at the party. Janae had not mentioned the sleepover to Tamara at all. In a last-ditch effort to make his story stick, Nefer sent a text message to his father's device, masked to make the text look like it came from his mom's device. Reading his mind, Nefer used the message to cover for the next thing his father would ask, why Tamara had not texted his father on the situation. So Nefer preempted the question by advising his father to check his phone messages. And there it was, 2 messages from Tamara, one before leaving for the meeting to say Janae could spend the night with Angelica, and another explaining she was heading directly to the airport from the meeting. The message also noted Tamara would call when she landed in Bermuda. Ferrari was approaching 50 years of age, but he struggled with the thought he hadn't remembered that Tamara was going to Bermuda instead of Miami to catch a cruise boat. Not wanting to alarm Nefer with his confusion, Ferrari asked him how the tournament had gone, when what he really wanted to do was run to his bedroom and check for Tamara's luggage. It was awesome, Dad. We almost won the Grand Slam, and we would have if that stupid Judge White hadn't disqualified Muhammad because he didn't bring his birth certificate to prove his age. Tamara's luggage question slipped from Ferrari's mind as he frowned at the thought of the grumpy retired judge who lived in the red brick house at the end of the street. The man was always screaming at the children walking past his gaudy blue and red mailbox atop a white pole on the edge of his yard. And Grump was always volunteering to monitor youth chess tournaments. When school children were bused from the ridge into Desfonto, the judge would be the only original homeowner of the neighborhood that didn't sell and move further south. But Ferrari was even more discouraged to hear his son explain it away. Oh well, Cece strikes again, as Nefer headed to his bedroom for the evening. Chapter 4, War on the Horizon. Chronological time, Sheta, universal age, Aquarius. Long count vibration, low. Earth calendar year 2016. Season day, Re, 184. Sun hours, 0711 Heros. A loud commercial encouraging children to beg their parents for a hovering skateboard was blaring from the television in the living room when Ferrari jumped from bed in the morning. The first thing he reached for was his cell phone, to find he had missed a call from Tamara. But his first duty would be to get Princess Lala's breakfast. Nefer had already seated baby girl in her pink booster chair and pulled her to the table in front of a bowl of bananas, apples, and walnuts. Ferrari was always amazed at how baby girl insisted on eating equal-handed with 2 forks. Nefer had taught her to do so as a way of exercising both sides of her brain. Nefer walked through the house wearing 2 book bags, one bag on front and the other on his back. He was preparing to leave for the Freedom Center in the Ridge for a Kiswahili class. Keeping with the family security model, Nefer would pick up his neighbor friend to go with him. Ferrari pushed a $10 bill into Nefer's back pocket to give the instructor as a donation. Nefer gave his father his usual Zen bow with prayer hands and headed out the back door to crank up the 1974 Volvo Ferrari had kept from his college days. Princess Lala was paying no attention to the blaring television. Instead, she talked to the nuts and fruit in her bowl, thanking nature for the nourishment of her body. Ferrari turned the TV station to the sports network and sat down at the dining table with baby girl. He checked his phone again to see if his wife had left a message associated with the missed call. Instead of a voice message from Tamara, Ferrari was disappointed to read just another text message. Made it to Miami late, but should be able to make my cruise boarding. Don't forget to pick up Janae from her sleepover. This confirmed it. To his surprise, Tamara had authorized the party, but Ferrari had no idea where to retrieve his middle daughter. With his wife out to sea, Ferrari figured he'd wait until 9 a.m. to call Janae's cheap disposable phone and get directions to Angelica's house. Chief Buzz Cook wished he'd retired the previous month instead of agreeing to extend his 28-year career with the Dallas Resource Authority by 6 more months to allow for a permanent replacement. The report in his hand described how only 16 of 366 Resource Authority officers clocked in for the graveyard shift. The Dallas County Executive for Domestic Agents sat across the table from him with a jumbo cup of coffee to her lips. So, how many deputies were hurt in the wall of fire at the airport? The chief asked in his usual calm, deep bass voice. Agent Rosa Seville looked to be a beautiful 20-year-old woman at the age of 60, but she wasn't easy to get along with. Seville was short in stature, but known to get into the face of anyone who challenged her. A few cuts and bruises for being too close to the jet when it took off without warning. Everyone is recovering like heroes, she said with a smile, still looking into her coffee cup. Cook admired how her face was eloquently framed by her dark curly hair, the shape of 9s, that posed his question another way. And anyone burned by the mystical flames? But the chief instantly knew he was crossing the line of questioning. The executive agent's smile disappeared, and she slammed her cup to the conference room table. using her crystal clear brown eyes to stare the chief down. He could hear her, but not see her lips moving. We never should have been tricked into coming back to the third dimension. These law enforcement jobs have us further devolving, and we knew they would be back, no matter how many charitable institutions we put up. Not able to hold her gaze much longer, Chief Cook was glad she was sitting across the table from him. He prepared himself to ask for backup, but she read his mind. "Mister, I'm smarter than Hotep," Seville began to lecture out loud. "Because of your mega ego, half my force was laid off last week for lack of budgeting resources. When you decided to turn me in for not cooperating to arrest non-criminal immigrants, you got rid of your backup." The chief looked downward at the absentee report and began to stutter. "Well, what about those auxiliary deputies you have for local emergencies?" Again, Seville sneered back with more bad news. "Oh, them old rich guys want to play cops? They're under investigation for shooting a little boy playing basketball at that West Side Rec Center. Didn't you hear? Those old farts were placing bets on which gringo could hit a niño before the boy came down from his jump shot." Cook could feel the spite growing in her tone as she began mixing her English and Moorish Latin words. She continued, "Now that there is speak of guardians of truth in nature, we're getting resignations by the hour. Some have expressed they are sending their families back south until they can join them." "Back south?" Cook raised his voice a bit. "This is Texas. You mean your people are leaving the country?" Cook tried to return to his calm tone before finishing the question. "Hell and yes," Seville spit back quickly. "You've been caught up in systematic internal societal illness for so long you don't remember what we really here for," she replied, hoping to further intimidate Chief Cook. But Cook wouldn't just yet lower his gaze into her beautiful eyes. They seemed more round than a silver dollar to him. Carefully, the chief asked, "So, what did the fire say to you?" The executive agent stood to leave, but wanted to get the last word in as she slowly slid past Cook's high-backed leather chair. "Hope none of this bothers your opioid-addicted princess wife. I hope she breaks a leg at the awards event Sunday night." Cook slowly lowered his gaze from her very serious eyes and dropped the absentee report on the table. Calling the governor's office in Austin with bad news was the last thing the chief wanted to do. With no help coming from the Department of Domestic Agents, he knew there were not enough law enforcement to patrol a city like Dallas with so many commercial interests. It was a known fact that hired out-of-state rioters were coming in for the Desfonto rally. The same authority paying the rioters had offered extra bonus to his officers to cover the rally. But with only a small fraction of resource authority officers still on the job, rioting could cost city establishments millions of dollars. After listening to call waiting music to the tune of military service trumpets, "Governor Kushnot's office, what is your emergency?" came from the other side of the phone line. The person answering the call on a private line offered to Cook when he took the Dallas Resource Authority chief position was polite and professional. We very low on Recess Authority staff and need backup as soon as possible, was his fastest reply. Who is this and what is the nature of the call? The person on the phone said in a tone that calmed Cook's anxiety. This is Chief Buzz Cook of the Dallas Department on Resource Authorities. Our patrol staff is not reporting to work. The chief wanted to continue but was cut off. Oh yes, glad you finally made the call. We have been waiting. The governor has the Texas Republic Guard ready to deploy troops in your area as soon as you hang up. Please stand down immediately and allow General Ivanov to take control of your city and county resources. Anything else? Was the spell Cook didn't want to hear. So he simply replied, no and thank you. With the worst part over, Chief Cook would make the second most dreaded call for the day. He would need to alert his only son, the youngest Dallas Assistant District Attorney, and advise him his reserve unit would be activated. But Cook decided to leave his son's mother, Executive Agent Seville, out of the loop for now. Kinskov was usually a quiet part of the island, but the harmonization of birds chirping seemed louder than usual, even out of rhythm. As the sun rose above the horizon, making her final descent from the muddy hills to the road, Eastar was not alarmed at the presence of peacekeeping soldiers standing by a government vehicle. 3 men stood watching other soldiers enter and leave a large white tent. It had been 11 years since the catastrophic earthquake, and countries from all over the world were still responding. The tent displayed the words Nations for Peace, N4P, in blue, with a fancy Red Cross emblem she didn't recognize. The streets were dry, and Eastar was running her geometry equations through her mind in preparation for the quiz her weekend tutor had promised last week. Reciting the formulas to herself, she heard a shout in a language she didn't recognize. Not wanting to break her concentration on the area of a triangle, Eastar decided to ignore the shouts and kept walking. But Eastar's stride was suddenly and violently halted. Rough hands pulled at her arms and shoulders. By instinct, Eastar started kicking at the assaulter with all her strength, but her big toe was getting sore after the first 2 kicks. Eastar's lightweight flip-flops were no match for the soldier's body armor. Fear had become more gripping than the pain she was feeling. The man dragged her along the road towards the tent. Dirt covered her eyes, but her ears were perfectly tuned in to the sound of men shouting and laughing, and what sounded like a mixture of Portuguese and French. Able to get one eye clear of dust on her face, she could see her attacker wore a light blue helmet with his white uniform. The screeching of birds overhead had gotten louder as Eastar was pulled into the tent with the fancy emblems, legs dragging behind her. She was compelled to ease her struggle when the man released her, falling to her knees. The tent was organized like an office. From a small radio on a desk, symphony music played featuring trumpets. But Eastar's fear was intensified at the sight of other young islanders like herself also captured in the tent. Directly in front of her, on the floor but some yards away, a young boy lay face down. The boy wasn't moving. Even further away, a girl older than herself sat on the floor in one of the tent's corners, with eyes closed. To Estar's left stood two other girls in a corner, clinging to each other as if their separation would result in sudden death. In front of the two standing girls reclined a tall, heavy N4P soldier with red hair. Big Red seemed to be sleeping when the man pulled Estar into the tent. Her abductor called out to him in that foreign language. Estar dropped her gaze, ashamed of the unfortunate circumstance she had found herself in. Since the earthquake, rumors haunted the island people of false intentions from international communities. Estar's family fled to the mountain villages to resist the effects of Sisi that were infecting the major cities of Haiti. Murders, prostitution, and drugs had begun to plague the island when the rescue workers arrived with their own cultural norms. Many from the international community set up hotels for special entertainment that would never have been allowed in their own home countries. The Kinskoff Sybil made it clear to the parents of Estar's village how dangerous it would be to send their children to the international sponsored schools. The Sybil offered a homeschooling network started by a woman in the United States. Estar loved working with Mrs. Tamra every week to review her curriculum and take her assessments. But against advisement of the network, Estar signed up when an In God We Trust global outreach minister arrived to provide weekend tutoring. Estar was adamant about getting advanced placement instruction before graduation to supplement her application to the University of Koba. If only Estar had used her instincts and not let her ambition get in the way of her elders' advisement, she would not be standing in an N4P tent, facing the danger of strangers in the city. But with math still on her mind, Estar wasn't ready to give in and become one of the statistics the Kinskoff activists constantly complained to authorities about. A squared plus B squared equals C squared trickled from her lips like a breath of fresh air to her thoughts. After repeating the formula 3 more times, Estar stopped the chant to feel the vibrations of what sounded like a roaring lioness. As she allowed Hotep's theorem to linger in her mind, Estar's school uniform was replaced by a red leather jumpsuit that fit her thin frame light skin. Her nails became claws of gold, and she felt whiskers extending from her cheeks. Estar's freshly braided hair sparkled as if electricity flowed through each lock. Above her eyebrows, she heard the hissing of a cobra. The smiling faces of the peacekeepers in the tent were replaced with grimaces of confusion at Estar's transformation. Once the captives realized the soldiers had become paralyzed by fear, the girls in the corners ran from the tent. Estar gently touched the young boy on his leg, and he instantly transformed into a full-grown obsidian male lion with full black mane. The male lion's roar was magnetic and felt by everyone still in the tent. His roaring only took a quick pause to verbalize in Estar's direction the words, "Nater Heru will take back this island." One by one, the male lion swiped at each soldier in the tent, and one by one, the white uniforms became ripped and bloodied by his mighty paws. Each soldier laying on the floor of the tent shook with fever as if on fire. The obsidian lion left the tall, heavy red-headed soldier for last, backing Big Red into the same corner he had intimidated the standing girls. The large male lion opened his mouth as if to bite Big Red. But from the mouth of the male lion, black smoke was released that completely covered the cowering red-head peacekeeper. Estar's new red legs had a mind of their own, walking Estar into the black smoke. Her hands began to move in a counterclockwise motion to form a circular object the size of a soccer ball. The heavy soldier was caught up in the smoky ball. Outside the tent, the birds had stopped chirping, and the three soldiers by the vehicle were looking skyward at what seemed to be a tornado circulating overhead. Estar hurled the ball of black smoke at the vehicle outside the tent, and the car exploded, catching fire. The three soldiers scrambled to put the flames out of their white uniforms. Islanders ran towards the burning vehicle, but stopped short of the sight for the lioness-headed girl with red skin, golden fingernails, and a hissing cobra for a headband. Estar somehow knew the tornado was her exit door, but looked back once more at the tent opening to see the young boy walking with confidence from the official's tent. People on the street were screaming and fainting. Estar recognized one of the neighborhood activists. Her hands were in prayer position as she sent nods in Estar's ascending direction. The activist whispered Mami Wata over and over again. Estar entered the vortex in the sky and was pulled into its circulation. The winds that followed the tornado extinguished the vehicle fire, and the three soldiers sat beside the car, wondering why they were not dead. Jake could hear a TV voice once again as he rolled off his office couch. More breaking news. Anthony's Air Base, right outside of Washington, is the 13th military base to come under attack by forces of nature this morning. The reporter went on to explain how fighter planes from Anthony's Air Force Base had returned to their airstrip and were under maintenance when lightning bolts of fire rained down with strategic accuracy. Many of the pilots had already exited the flight line after completing their overnight missions to Central Africa, looking for the mysterious escaping transport of Dallas ER patients. Jake wiped his eyes hard and fast. The TV monitor showed pure chaos in color. Video technicians scrambled to return cameras knocked off their stands by the explosions of fully fueled U.S. jets. Jake left his eyes alone to reach for the volume controller. He muted the background audio, causing high-pitched screeching noises. Uniformed servicemen and women ran shouting as burning metal crashed all around them. The news feed switched to a Nigerian correspondent in Lagos that began reporting on another breaking story. A representative of the military is not commenting on whether they approved a landing pattern for the mysterious jet that fled the U.S. last night. It is not clear what country the plane originates from or how it was able to enter U.S. airspace undetected, but we will continue to ask questions. Reporting from the United Tribes of the Congo. After a few major blinks, Jake watched the feed go to a pharmaceutical commercial before returning to the major network newsroom. Yet another reporter began. We have word from the U.S. destroyer ship Barack that the jet of Dallas ER hostages indeed flew over their position last night, but not without dropping a compression bomb into the water not more than 100 feet off their starboard. The bomb has caused major disruption in their electronics and sonar equipment, disabling their efforts to further track the fleeing mysterious aircraft. It is projected the terrorist plane and its hostages have probably dispersed throughout the Central African continent by now. The TV monitor went to another pharmaceutical commercial as Jake mouthed the questions. Terrorists? Hostages? By 8 o'clock a.m., Jake's weekend team began to assemble in the conference room in a steady stream. Already briefed on the lightning strikes at the U.S. air bases, many acknowledged access to the story would soon be blocked from those without security clearances. Jake intensely looked for Steve in the group of weekend staff. Even though Jake insisted on calling Kwame out of his name, Jake was well aware of his home ties to Haiti. Taking the stereotypical approach that kept him in charge, Jake was confident Steve would provide a good story on the events of the previous day. Without thinking the better of it, Jake called out to Ebony as she was entering the room. Ebony, do you know where Steve is? Ebony was distraught at the thought she wouldn't have a chance to investigate the story. She had been denied a security clearance 3 times in 3 years she worked for the news company. Ebony's depressed thoughts were clearly heard when she replied to Jake's question, "Why you ask me? 'Cause I'm from the Ridge?" Jake wasn't prepared for what he considered her insubordination and turned to take his frustrations out on someone else. He called for Becky, but quickly remembered he had sent her to find Steve the previous evening. For all Jake knew, Rebecca had spent the night at Steve's apartment again. But his temporary memory lapse was quickly broken at the ringing of his mobile device. The call was international. "Comrade, do you have anyone who can cover incoming news that a number of peacekeepers were attacked in Haiti hours ago?" was the voice of a man with a thick Slavic accent. Jake thought a few minutes on how to best reject the request for a story he considered far less important than the matters at hand. As Jake formed words in his head, the weekend staff began to file out of the conference room. Jake was able to find decorum, using his formal English, to explain to the voice on the phone there were far more pressing issues in his city at the time. The caller took a minute to pause at the rejection, but in a slow, deliberate tone, the caller began to explain there may be a connection to the Black Beret soldiers incident. "You see, comrade, a woman in the street tells us her son works for you, and that the son can explain the voodoo in Dallas." Jake grabbed the room's intercom device and began paging for Steve and Ebony to come to the conference room. "Hold a minute, comrade. I need my staff to return to hear this," was Jake's instruction to the international phone caller. After screaming into the intercom device another 2 times, the tall blonde cowboy with nothing valuable to contribute in the previous day's meeting arrived. It was Jake's hope Steve and Ebony were in the cowboy's wake and would follow. But after looking past the tall blonde, Jake returned his attention to the cowboy, demanding to know where everyone else was. "Everyone left the building a few minutes ago except for me and Ebony," was the blonde's nervous reply. "Well, go get Ebony then, and hurry," Jake snapped. Jake had poured and sugared a coffee with the news media comrade in Haiti patiently holding on the line. The tall blonde returned to the room, followed a few seconds later by Ebony. Initially, Jake wanted to dismiss the blonde from the room out of his frustration with the employee, but he just as quickly remembered it not a good idea to spend time alone with Ebony. She had already filed complaints with the Human Resources Department of staff members' racial and sexual abusive behavior. Ebony, on the line is one of our Russian correspondents with an unusual story breaking in Haiti. Would you please let us know if you believe it to be connected to the events we are covering here in Dallas? Was Jake's polite and professional request before instructing the Russian caller to start over with the eyewitness accounts. So, like I said, a woman on the street says she is the mother of a man named Kwame that works for you. And one of her neighborhood schoolgirls was seen being dragged into a Nations for Peace, N4P, checkpoint tent about 0800 hours Haiti time this morning. The woman said she was too frightened to approach the peacekeepers by herself, so she went into the house to get her sons to check out the situation. While gathering her sons, she could hear loud roaring sounds and vibrations that made she and her sons run from the house in fear of an earthquake. Once outside the house, the family members could hardly believe the chaotic scene. There was a swirling tornado overhead, and the village girl was dressed in a red jumpsuit with a cobra on her head. The girl threw a black ball at an M4P vehicle. Well, some soldiers caught on fire before a large lion exited the tent with what seemed like a live head in the lion's mouth. At that, the Russian caller stopped to pause, out of breath. The staff in the conference room sat quietly. Jake and the blonde were both looking to Ebony, who was writing in her notebook. When Ebony looked up from her notebook, the two men in the room returned their direction to the conference phone, and Jake asked the international caller if he had anything more to tell. So, yes, the woman says the neighbor girl grew rainbow wings and flew into the tornado, while the big black lion paraded around the streets with the head for another 5 or so minutes. Jake's dentures were slipping from his mouth again. The Russian continued. Then she said the lion dropped the head in the street and headed down the road toward Port-au-Prince. She wants you to tell her son to come home as soon as possible. Something about the genie has returned? Again, Jake took liberty to stare at Ebony, busy with her notebook. He then returned to the conference device to ask the caller, what is the official response of law enforcement on the scene? The Russian caller was hesitant, as if his English was beginning to fail him when he replied, well, you might not believe this, but when Haitian officials arrived on the scene, they found all involved peacekeepers bloodied, down on their knees, crying and begging for forgiveness. Jake's face painfully swelled before losing his cool and shouting into the device, what the hell? No one got burned up? What about the headless soldier? Again, the response from the Russian caller was slow and careful. No. The Haitian authorities tell us the peacekeepers were at one time all burned up, but the voodoo witch came and healed them. Another man on the street says the head was sucked into the tornado and came back out with a completely new body, a child's body. When Jake turned to see Ebony writing in her notebook, there was a very noticeable smile on her face. At the sight of her humor, Jake's first thought was to admonish her, but he thought better of the situation. Instead, he turned back to the intercom device and assured the Russian a call back in the next 2 hours. Glad Jake had stormed out of the building to get some air, Ebony made a mad dash to her truck in the parking garage. She and her sister, Malana, had committed to ongoing Saturday morning phone chats some years ago after Malana received her first recording contract. When Ebony's truck phone feature indicated an incoming call, she neglected to check the caller ID before engaging her hands-free device. But the sound of shouting on the other end of the phone forced Ebony to quickly turn the volume down on her truck speakers. But the sound of shouting on the other end of the phone forced Ebony to quickly turn the volume down on her truck speakers. Her co-worker, Kwame, known as Steve to Jake, was screaming above the sound of a crowded room. Catching him in a pause, Ebony screamed back for him to lower his voice and talk more slowly. "I'm at the airport in Miami, and I need my press credentials to get home," was his frantic response. Ebony's mind wasn't working fast enough to understand his request. "Miami? Why the hell are you in Miami? Don't you live in Lancaster?" Kwame went quiet for a few seconds before explaining his trip to Haiti at his mother's emergency request. He said he was lucky to get out of Texas before the governor declared martial law that preempted all southern coastal states to take the same measures. But Ebony wasn't catching on. She hadn't been informed of any travel restrictions and had more questions. Kwame tried to explain as calmly as he could when they both heard a woman call out his name, "Steve!" But instead of Kwame acknowledging his corporate name, Ebony could hear instead him begging for his freedom before rapid, loud popping sounds let loose. Ebony quickly started an app session on her phone to record what Kwame's device might capture. The rapid popping continued coming from Kwame's phone as it lay on the terminal floor. Ebony could hear people screaming while the phone video camera captured an image of the airport terminal ceiling. Still driving, Ebony was almost home before someone picked the phone up and pointed it in the direction of Kwame laying on the terminal floor, bleeding. 3 Florida Republic guardsmen knelt by his body, with their handguns still trained on the dying man. In the background, people ran in all directions. As Ebony pulled into her home garage, she was shocked to see a woman change Kwame's phone to selfie mode. Smiling for the camera was her co-worker, Rebecca Cave, from the Dallas newsroom. Still in the driver's seat of her truck, parked in her home garage, Ebony continued to watch and listen to Becky, commentating on the happenings using Kwame's phone. But to Becky's surprise, another set of popping noises were headed her way. Becky turned the camera towards a group of women wearing black berets over the twists in their hair. The female soldiers were shooting their way onto the scene with rifles. Most bystanders had already exited the terminal by the time the soldier women reached Becky, forcing her to surrender Kwame's phone. Becky was begging one of the women to allow her to keep the phone when the device went flying from her hands and the live feed app on Ebony's phone was interrupted. Ebony left the truck door open as she ran through the utility room door and scrambled to her desktop workstation like she had forgotten to walk. Her live recording app was showing an error message she didn't recognize. She worked swiftly to download the recording to her desktop hard drive. While she waited for completion of the file, another breaking news alert came across the TV monitors in the house. The headline read, "Miami ISIS terrorist kills 5 and himself." Ebony was beginning to wonder if her sore eardrum from Kwame screaming had caused her brain damage. The headline in no way matched what she had just witnessed through Kwame's phone. The download counter confirmed the file was complete. Ebony reached for one of the many jump drives she kept close to make copies. Taking careful steps to reproduce the video file, she watched images on TV of people running through the Miami airport terminal. Miami Resource Authority officers in white shirts and blue pants with red stripes began taping off an area around a man laying face down on the terminal floor. The body, under a white sheet, was frozen in Ebony's mind. She could barely see the man's jacket with the solidarity flag of Haiti on the back.